Well, mm, dear friends and fellows, good afternoon in this cloudy afternoon here in Zaragoza. I don't know how it is in your homes. Today we start our series of conversations with future with two analysts and specialists in natural resources and energy. We're pleased to have here today Osa Borssén, co-founder and host of High Grade Media. High Grade is an interview series with leading thinkers on issues of natural resources and development. She is an experienced extractive policy analyst with a JD in international law and a master's in international affairs. And Miguel Castañeda as well, CEO and founder of Sustainability Worldwide Center 2050, a research center in sustainability and the leader of Catalyst Sustainability Graduate School. He is an experienced professional in natural resources, energy transition, and global research in sustainability with a master's in social and political management and a master's in business research. We will have 30 minutes of interview with the two experts, first with Elsa and later with Miguel. And later we will have 15 minutes of questions and answers. If you have any questions during the interview, please write them in the chat and they will be answered in the section at the end of the event. Well, we can start. Nowadays, natural resources are becoming increasingly important in the international agenda as we see patterns of change and new technologies appear. And a lot of questions raised from the situation of uncertainty and transition. First, Sosa, what do you think are the main issues with the development of non-renewable natural resources and energy?
Well, first of all, let me say thank you very much for having me in this first webinar series. It's a pleasure. I'm here in Stockholm and it's 30 degrees and very sunny, so I think it's kind of the same weather as you have. But on to natural resources then. Well, I think first of all, I think it's important to say that natural resources have been very good to humanity and to our development. It's not a coincidence that we say Iron Age, Bronze Age, etc. So I think that's sort of where we need to start. It's been good for us, the extraction of non-renewable resources. But then you have the non-renewable part, and that is a problem. It's a one-off value that you extract from the ground and then it's gone. Whereas the quite opposite with sustainable development, where it's supposed to last for generations. So there are quite a number of issues. Extraction inevitably leaves quite a big footprint in the ground. You have big environmental issues in many parts of the world. You have quite a lot of social issues. A lot of communities in the world, around the world, feel like they have ruined, extractors projects have ruined livelihoods, they have ruined the environment, the health, safety, and all of those issues. So I think there are quite a number of issues that the extractives industry might not have been very good at responding to. I think that it wasn't until maybe around the millennium where this shift happened in the extractives industry, where they started to thinking about sustainable development, to sustainability, and what is it that they can offer to host countries where they extract these resources. So I think that while it's absolutely been profound in our development, there are a number of issues, social issues, environmental issues, that we really haven't figured out how to solve yet.
Okay, yeah, there are so many issues. And like, what are the main extractive and energetic corporations dealing with this issue?
Yeah, I think this is very interesting, and we've interviewed a number of company representatives to discuss what it is they are doing. And I think if you look at it sort of from a little bit of an historic perspective, in the 1990s, the extractives was in quite a bit of a crisis. The commodity prices were low. There were a lot of criticism towards the extractive sector from both host governments, from local communities, from the international society, that this is not working. We see these issues and you are not dealing with them. So they felt in the late 90s, they felt that we need to do something differently. And there were a number of initiatives that started, and one quite famously in the mining sector was called the MMSD, so Mining and Metals for Sustainable Development. And that was sort of a shift in the thinking around the extractives industry. From that MMSD initiative came a report where they said, we need to think about this differently. We need to approach sustainable development in a different way. And that's, for example, when the ICMM was launched. So the ICMM was a product of that development where they said, the extractive sector said, we need to look at this differently. We need to make sure that we have a social license to operate, which means we need to talk to communities. We need to listen to them, to their needs. We need to make sure that we are contributing the best we can to uplift communities and society at large. So that was sort of how this sort of narrative of sustainable development came to be part of the extractive sector. And I think today we see a lot of companies that are doing this pretty well, especially some of the bigger companies, the Anglo-Americans of this world, the Rio Tintos of this world. There are still issues, I'm not saying there aren't, but they are really trying to integrate sustainable development in the work that they do. And we've had a number of interviews that you can check out because, as you said, High Grade interviews thought leaders in this sector. So highgrade.media, and you can go and check out all the interviews. So they are doing quite a bit of work. They have done a lot of research on this, actually. And that's one of the reasons why we started High Grade, is that there are a lot of research that are now in companies that don't get out. So we wanted to make sure that this research that is done in companies are actually reaching a wider audience. So that's one of the fundamental reasons why we started High Grade. But then on the other side, you have these sort of mid-sized companies that are kind of flying under the radar. So they might not have the international community watching them and saying, oh, what are you doing? You're doing this wrong. You're causing this and this and this issue. But they're sort of doing things in maybe a little bit of a cowboy way, where they don't have this structural thinking around sustainable development. And I think those are maybe the ones that can cause the biggest harm, because they have big enough operations to cause harm while not having that same kind of overview. And then, of course, the other side of the spectrum, which I haven't mentioned yet, is of course small scale mining, which is a completely different story. It's a story of poverty, but small scale mining is causing a lot of issues in a lot of countries where they don't have the safety and health or the environmental thinking at all. And Miguel, you can probably talk more about the case in Peru, for example, where, I mean, that was a massive destruction of landscape and forestry and biodiversity. So you have this kind of spectrum of what people are, or what the extractives companies are doing when it comes to approaching sustainable development and trying to do something good with what they are doing, which is extracting a non-renewable resource from the ground and turning that into a profit.
Wow.
Yeah.
You want to say anything, Miguel?
No, that's true. In Peru is a very special. This activity moves the economy in Peru, the mining. You know, it's the most important. But it has a lot of problems around the operations. Most of the most important projects in mining in this moment are stopped because of social crisis. Social crisis has stopped a lot of mining projects, very important projects that could help to the economy in Peru. But that's the reason, because, you know, and of course, most of them are inside areas that the biodiversity is very, very present. So in the jungle, there are some projects, but in the highland, more of them.
Yeah.
So yes, that's true that Osa is talking about.
Yeah, I didn't know this spectrum of so many different levels. of development, of sustainability. Yeah, but it's true. If they are they are poorer, they have less resources to make them better.
Yeah, I mean, for one example is the use of mercury, which is known, and everyone pretty much knows that this is causing severe health issues and also destruction of environment. But they don't have a choice. That's what they have at hand. And it is, as I said, a poverty issue. So they need to make sure that they have money to take care of their families.
Yeah.
And of course, you're not going to say, oh, well, we're not going to eat today because I can't use mercury. That's not how it works. If you're poor, if you need to have that money, you're not going to care about the health and environment in the same way. Of course. So, but there are really good initiatives. The international community, the World Bank, and other development organizations are working. There is now, it's called something Mercury Scheme, something I can't remember right now, where they're starting to help communities, mining communities, to change mercury out for something that is better, because there are options. It's just that it's not available, and it's not the sort of highest of priorities when you fight for your life and your livelihood. So there are ways of helping, supporting, but severe issues, really severe damage that they can cause to themselves and to the environment around them.
There's a necessity for supranational institutions to do so. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
in this way, what are the most developed countries' governments doing about these natural resources in order to adapt to the consumption of minerals and energy?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So the most developed countries would be, for example, the EU. For example, there are others, but for the EU countries, one issue that is very important is, of course, security of supply. So they have industries. For example, Germany. I used to work for the German government in extractives and development issues. And for example, one of their priorities is to make sure that they have supply to support their industries. So that is sort of one mindset that they have. They're talking about consumption, they're talking about reducing consumption, but when it comes down to it, they want security of supply. They want to make sure that their industries can operate, and they want to make sure that their car sector has the lithium, the cobalt that they need. So that is sort of one of the main concerns. Another thing that, of course, which is talked about in the EU, is sort of more of a circular economy. So they are trying to find ways to recycle minerals and metals, this urban mining where you go and find old copper pipes, for example, and then transform that into consumption. So there is talk about it, but when it comes down to it, most developed countries, and if they don't have a mining industry themselves, they at least want to make sure that they have a steady stream of supply going into their own industry. Yeah. Now, there are, of course, also developed countries with big mining sectors. Canada is one case in point. They are, as they say themselves, that they are a champion of good practice, and they work a lot with other governments, showing how they are managing their sector, showing what they are doing on, say, environmental issues. But they have problems as well. They have also problems when operating in other countries. There are some court cases coming up where Canadian mining companies are accused of human rights abuse. So there are these issues even in developed countries, and also companies from developed countries working in other environments. I don't know if that answered your question, but maybe part of it.
No, we didn't. Oh, in this way, you talked about the EU. How will the European Green Deal impact these corporations? Do you think it will have any impact?
I said before we started that I don't know the details really about the EU Green Deal, but I mean, I think in general, when looking at the energy transition, and what I know about the EU Green Deal is that there, as always with the EU, there are countries that have very different views on how to implement these things. They also disagree a little bit on the goal. What is a climate neutral by 2050? I think it is, Miguel, or do you remember?
Yeah. Carbon neutral in 2050.
Yeah. So there are a lot of still conversations around this between member countries and how it's going to be done, etc. But when you do look at the energy transition, there is this very strong link to the extractives sector, of course, because of the supply of aluminium, the lithium, cobalt, copper, etc. You need that in the energy transition, and the World Bank has talked a lot about this, and they talk a lot about the need for minerals in this energy transition. What's kind of also become the new kind of PR thing that the mining sector is talking about, that we're needed. I mean, the extractive sector pretty much caused the climate change. They're at the heart of climate change debate. I mean, burning fossil fuels is what got us here. But the extractives are now trying to say that you need us to make sure that this energy transition can happen. So again, I go back to this security of supply. For the EU, that is going to be essential. We don't have, in the EU, we don't have a lot of, we have some cobalt, but not a lot. There are a lot of things that we need coming in to the EU in terms of supply. We do have a quite old mining sector that some are talking about that they need to restart the mining sector. And I think part of that is because of the security of supply issue. So that is when I attended the EU Raw Materials Week last year, and the security of supply issue and sort of restarting the European mining sector, that was one of the main topics. But countries like Sweden, we do have some iron ore. It doesn't last us very long though. So we will be dependent, or the EU will be dependent on outside sources for the energy transition to make that happen.
Yeah, we definitely will be dependent. And how are the governments implementing the processes of digitalization, for example? Digitalization?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, the digitalization and kind of this fourth industrial revolution, automation is definitely impacting the extractive sector. I see it more maybe from a company perspective than a government perspective, where the companies are trying to use those new technologies to increase profits, basically to increase productivity. It's already happening, and they already have driverless cars, driverless trains, etc. So we're coming closer to sort of this future we're talking about, where everything is digitalized and automated. And I think, for example, with COVID, I think that could be a trend that is accelerating this, because suddenly when you needed to work remotely and you needed everything to work digital like we are now. So I think that kind of spurred on that trend, and there's no stopping. I think that's really where the industry is heading. We did release a podcast not too long ago where we talked about this, about mining productivity, and whether this digitalization actually would increase productivity as much as the mining industry might want it to. And the answer of David Humphreys, my guest, was that it might not actually. So do listen to that. It's a really good podcast, very interesting, but there are some warning signs for the industry to look out for. The one thing also to say about this trend, this digitalization, automation trend that we're seeing, is that it has implications on taxation, for example. Where do you tax things when everything is run digitally? Or with automation, what happens? Because one of the main benefits a mining company can offer to a host community is job opportunities. And what happens when a mine is fully automated and there no longer are job opportunities? What happens with this social license to operate that I mentioned in the beginning? So there are some really big questions and things that can really, like, overarching questions for the industry to think about, resolve, talk to host communities, a dialogue that really needs to be happening between mining companies and host communities.
Yeah, in governments, you said that about taxes, and all the legislation is going to change. It has to change.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, there are a lot of issues in my extraction and extractives and taxation, and that's one of the things that we see in the future might cause issues for governments. And there is a podcast on taxation coming up, so make sure to listen to that one as well.
Of course, yeah. Okay, how are the multilateral organisms and business professions management impacted in this process of corporate modernization?
Oh, that's a tough one. Yeah. So the multilaterals, how they are working, I mean, I think that a lot of the work that they do still in the multilaterals, that kind of is the basic stuff. You need to go into a country, you need to talk to governments, you need to talk to people on the ground, and you need to find what is bothering them. What is it that they need help with that can help them sort of rise on the development ladder. And of course, there will be different focus, and the focus, for example, on taxation in a digital era could be one of those sort of eras that they need to cover now that they didn't before. But I haven't seen really, well, yeah, there are things like blockchain technology that might help responsible supply chains, for example, but these are kinds of case by case, and that always changes. What the multilaterals are focusing on, that always changes. But I haven't seen really that the way that they work would change that much. You still need to be in the countries and talk to the people it actually matters to. Miguel, maybe you have something else to say on that point.
Do you want to say anything, Miguel?
About the multilateralism, well, there are a lot of things about it. I think that there is a transition that inclusive these organisms are passing, especially in this era. This is very different because most of the energy transition, for example, is needed, but the infrastructure and the conditions are not prepared to change to renewable energy, for example. For example, if tomorrow you close all the oil fields or all the coal mines, we are going to have a big problem with energy. So multilateralism would like to change as soon as possible, but the conditions are not prepared. That's we are going to talk about in deep in our conversation when we are going to talk about the connection between renewable natural resources and renewable energy. But of course, for example, European Commission, right? You know, the Green Deal of European Commission. The most important organism in Europe would like, if they could, tomorrow they would change all the conditions from coal or oil and gas to renewable. But they know it's impossible. For example, in Poland, you have a very problem in Poland or Hungary. All of this country depends of coal. Yes, they say we need to change, but today we cannot do it. We need to do it step by step. That's the reason, because Paris Agreement is going to 2052. Some people and some organizations are telling that it is necessary to arrive on 2030, but for me, it's not going to be possible to change all the countries. The World Bank, with this economy that we are living in this moment, is thinking to change everything too. The big funds, for example, the Norwan funds, you know, you live very near Orsha. The biggest fund, economical fund, it depends from the oil, of course, you know. So it is necessary in this moment. We know that we need to change, but we need to make this transition a fair transition, and of course, step by step. The different organizations are very sure that it is necessary. It is not nobody doubts about it. Nobody say it is not going to happen. And of course, the funds, the international fund too, the most important organization that rule the economy all over the world, say this is economic, this is the feasibility, the economical feasibility is good, is correct. The problem are the conditions in this moment. So let's wait for that to make the transition as soon as possible, of course, but we need to wait for something to change.
Yeah, very good point. That the World Bank can no longer fund coal. That's just a reality. They tried in South Africa, and that was heavily criticized. So they can't do that any longer. But what happens then, because countries, as you say, they can't give up coal, especially the developing countries, they need coal for their development. So who's backing that now? Well, China. And so you do see that a lot of projects, especially now I've seen a lot of news about Southern Africa and coal project that China is backing now. So that is definitely there is an issue for the World Bank there, one that they have grappled with for quite some time, because what the things that they can do, how they can approach is talking about a just transition. How do you make sure that workers that were in the mine, the coal mine, how do you make sure that they have jobs after the coal mine is closing, which is basically what is going on in the US as well. That was the sort of agenda that Trump had in the last election. We need to restart this coal because we don't have jobs for our workers. Yes. So the just transition, that's where the World Bank can sort of try to support countries. They also talk a lot about the power of the mine, making sure that the infrastructure that is built around the mine can be used for the country at large. So they want to support companies with renewable energy systems around the mine site, but making sure that it's plugged into the national system. So trying to make the link between what the mining companies are doing and the development in the country at large.
This is so interesting. We're now facing in Spain a big challenge with this in the mining sector. It's over. Yeah. It's been over for 10 years, but they didn't want to do the transition, and now they're forced to do it. So I think that it's really important to put realistic objectives, goals, like 2050 is a realistic goal, but we have to start now. It's a way to think, okay, we have this goal, but if we don't start yet, we're going to fail, definitely.
Yeah. And we also have, we have this pretty much this one big mine. No, we have a few others as well in Sweden, but we have one really big mine, iron ore mine, underground, the world's largest underground iron ore mine. But we also make steel, which is extremely, emits a lot of carbon emissions, of course. So what they are trying now, instead of closing that down, they're trying to come up with new ways. So they're ways of doing it which doesn't require coal, for example. So what they're doing is that they're working together with the iron ore mine and the steel company, the university, and a few other parties in the same area, and trying to come up with a way, how can we need the steel, we need this industry in the country, how can we make sure that we do this in sort of the greenest way possible, the most climate smart way possible. So these are the initiatives. If you don't want to completely shut down the mine, maybe there are other ways of doing it. Now, I don't see a way of doing that for coal, maybe, but they've tried to do that, at least here with the steel industry.
It's difficult. Okay, well, many thanks, Elsa. It's been really interesting. Let's start with you, Miguel. Well, you can say anything, Elsa, if you want to add anything to Miguel's
Good.
opinions. Well, we know that a lot of research about natural resources and management of the future of energy are being developed right now globally. What are the main findings?
Well, you know, we have a research process through our institution, the Sustainability Worldwide Center 2050, is a research center installed here in Barcelona. Now, we are, which addresses global sustainability issues. The principal issue that we talk about is all the components around the sustainability. Of course, we are ruled by the United Nations 17 objectives, the global objectives to sustainable development. But we see different topics in this research center. But one of the most important topics for us is the transition, the energy transition inside of renewable energy, and of course, natural resources. What is going to happen with natural resources in the near future and the renewable energy? It means something that we have found is that we are going to pass from the dependency from coal, oil, and gas to another kind of dependency. It means to rare earth, something that OSHA knows very good, and lithium, for example. Lithium is a new mineral that is very, very important and is going to be needed in the near future. Right now, not in the near future. So it means we are going to change the rules of the dependency, but at the end, we are going to depend on another kind of natural resources, right? And of course, and this is directly, it has a direct relationship with digitalization. There is a link between renewable energy and digitalization. They are not separated. So we need to explore more about this, what kind of relationship we have about it. But of course, this kind of new minerals, earth, the rare earth and lithium are going to rule the world.
Well, what are the rare earth elements and the lithium? And why is it that they are so important right now?
Well, the earth, when we talk about earth, rare earth, maybe we're thinking about a planet. The earth, they're talking about, it's an archaic definition. It depends of, it refers to something that can be dissolved in acid. But in other words, earth is the name of the oxides. When you hear about earth, you are hearing about oxides of the mineral, of different minerals. It's strange because these kind of minerals are not alone. For example, when you mine a copper mine or a gold mine, you find copper, gold, or silver. But when you want to find this kind of minerals, you are going to find all of them together. So that's the reason because everybody calls, or the scientists call about this rare earth, right? So in the world, there are 17 kinds of rare earth. And you know where are the most important mines of this kind of rare earth? In China. Oh. So one of another issue that is talking about Asia. So China in this moment has the most important, and not only this kind of mineral. They produce, they have all the smelters, they have all the factories to produce all the artifacts we are using in our mobile, in our TV, in our batteries, etc. So that is the reason because most of the governments in Europe and in the United States also are very worried about this because the power is going to have the country who has the natural resources to produce them. Something very, very interesting to know that the United States, for example, in Los Angeles, in California, there is an important mine of rare earth, but the owners of this company are from China too. So we are going to have some important rules that are going to change in the near. And something important too to explain is about the implication of environmental and social issues, something that is talking about, that has talked OSHA. Yes, some people are worried about this kind of minerals, the kind of natural resources, because of course, if you want to explore, if you want to make to research about this kind of ore, you need to move a lot of quantity of dirt. So you are going to make a disruption, a very important disruption in the area. And in Spain, you have a very important mine of the rare earth. But yes, that is stopped. That is stopped in this moment because of social problems. Different problems that we have in Latin America, very different. Communities, in Latin America, communities, some political issues. In this case, it's not community, but the people around near, down the river down, are complaining about it, and they have stopped this important project. This important project is almost the studies that they have made. 30% of the Europa could need to make batteries in every year. So it's very important. Very important.
It is. Yeah, you say that China is now the
what China is going to do. We don't know.
Yeah, you say that China is now the leader, and that we will be dependent on them if we are not already. But does this imply some change in the geopolitics of the economic power of the gas and petroleum exporting countries to those rich in rare earth elements and lithium?
Of course, yes, it is. And that's the explanation, the brief explanation that I have made. We see this in a few years, from the dominion of the petroleum, the oil and gas from Saudi Arabia or the different Arabic countries, or United States, of course, from the power of China or the other countries. Listen very carefully, people who is in America. The most important for batteries too is lithium, and the most important reservoir of lithium is in South America, in Argentina, Bolivia, and Chile. Almost 80% of this mineral is in Latin America. So in this moment, the OPEP, the organization petroleum of
exporting countries.
Yeah, it is in South America in this moment. They are going to create something similar, but not from oil and gas. From oil, it's from lithium. So the rules are going to change in very near future. From the power the countries that have the oil and gas, from countries that are going to have these important natural resources. These two important, the 17 elements from rare earth to and the lithium, of course, because it is going to be very important for the batteries and all the elements, electronic elements that we are using right now.
But is this future going to be better, or I mean, how are these natural mineral resources linked to the environmental impact? Are they as damaging as coal, gas, and oil, or do they contribute to global sustainability?
There is something difficult to know. Of course, there is a big disruption when you make a mine, right? It depends on the kind of mine that you do. It's an open pit. It means you can see the mine, or inside the earth, all right? But of course, there are a lot of environmental studies before the operation. No? But if you measure between the level of pressure that carbon dioxide and methane that affects the planet and the greenhouse gases, they are from coal, oil, and gas. Of course, it is not going to happen with this kind of minerals, right? With the earth, with the rare earth and lithium, right? But there is going to be another kind of impact, especially the area that you are going to use to get this kind of minerals, right? But of course, as I told you, it's important that all the citizens, all the organizations, the authorities must be very close to see how the company is going to make this operation. For example, that we are talking about Spain, this important deposit in Spain, it could be an important opportunity for Spain to develop this deposit. But of course, we need to be very, very close to look at, to watch that the operation could be very safe, and of course, to respect the environment and the people around it.
Yeah. Okay. You mentioned the 17th element of rare earth and lithium as well. Is this another rare earth element or another mineral?
No. It's not. The 17 rare earths are different. Lithium is another one. Lithium is called the white gold. It's a dust, white, and it is abundant in the salt flats. Where there are a lot of salt mines, you are going to find this kind of mineral.
So do we have in Europe? In
Europe, lithium, there is not too much, right? And the most important in this moment is Australia, right?
Oh.
It's Australia the most important, but the potential are these three countries: Argentina, Bolivia, and Chile, and part of the Peru. In the south of Peru, there is a little deposit of this kind of mineral. In Europe, there are not too much of lithium, but of course, in Europe there is too much deposit of rare earth, like not only in Spain, in different countries of the Union.
Okay.
Right. And China also has lithium. Not the same. Yes, not the same as Australia. Chile is the second producer in this moment, but the third position, China, is a very important producer of lithium. So if you have lithium and you have the rare earth, you have the power of the next years. No, we are not talking about a near future. We are talking right now. Present, so that's the reason. That's the reason, because the European Union and the Eurozone is very worried about it, because if you want to be safe in the near future to the Industry 4.0 in this industry linked to the digitalization, you need to have autonomy, or you need to be safe to get this kind of products. Because if you made the factories, if you don't have the minerals, you don't have the resources, you are not going to have the problem. So one of the plans of Europe is to develop an aggressive activity of exploration for this kind of minerals. Well, I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, nobody knows, I think. Do you want to add anything, Elsa?
Oh, no, but it's very interesting. I mean, these are fundamental discussions for where we are going in the world. Just to give some dimension, I think China, at least a couple of years ago, they were controlling 96% of the rare earth. So it's really a domination, which is why they could start the solar panel industry and dominate that. And so there's a big kind of trade issue around it, where the US feels like the trade hasn't been fair. So that is going to continue, I think, between the US and China, because China is such a dominant player when it comes to rare earths. Just as a curiosity, trivia, a lot of the rare earths were discovered around Stockholm. There's one called scandium, for example, as in the Scandinavian countries. So that was just some trivia. But we did an interview called Minerals for the Future, where you can see maps of where you have the lithium, where you have the cobalt, where you have all these elements that today, in today's industry, in the technology that we're developing today, will be essential. Now that is, though, there is a caveat to that, because we don't know exactly where this technology is going. So these countries, the lithium triangle, that we were talking about with Bolivia and Chile and Argentina, what if technology changes in 5 years? Maybe they put in a lot of money, a lot of efforts, they disrupt the environment in that area. Yeah. And then 5 years from now, the technology changes and suddenly we don't need lithium anymore. We need graphite, for example. So there are a lot of insecurities, and for countries, that's really a big challenge for them when it comes to developing these resources that they have.
Yes, yes. And of course, to develop the wind farms, all of the wind farms that we need to the eolic, and yes, of course, we are going to need a lot of copper. And you know, in South America, there is a lot of copper. Chile and Peru are the leaders in copper. So we are going to need natural resources from mining, but we need to be responsible about it. For example, the biggest deposit of ore and copper is in Peru. It means, but it's stopped in this moment. The biggest, and one of the biggest deposit of gold is in Peru too, and it's stopped right now because of the social issues. And it is, of course, a shared responsibility, of my opinion, between the governments, the different governments, that hasn't made a very good strategy to develop the conditions to accept this kind. And the other responsibility is the corporate, different corporate that hasn't been hasn't made a good approach, a good strategy to develop this. And so if you imagine, I always tell to my students this, if in Peru, for example, if you have developed 2 or 3 deposits of copper and gold, the GDP of Peru could be 5, 6, or 7 per year. It's very important. But of course, the social issues are one of the big problems.
Yeah, and we cannot forget them. Like, they must be central in the policy.
Yeah.
Regarding the issue of energy, what can we expect from the increasing importance of the renewable energy industry? Will we see a complete and global development of this technology in the next years? When do you think?
Well, there is no turning back.
Okay. Yeah.
We are in this position. We cannot come back. What comes from here to forward is almost a deployment in renewable energy in everything. And all the community, financial, political, and institutionals, I agree about it. That's what we were talking at the beginning, right? This is not a problem of technical, it's not a problem of economical, it's not a problem of political, it's a problem of what we are going to do with the current infrastructure of oil and gas that we have all over the world. So this is a big problem because in this moment it's less expensive to develop a project, a renewable project, than an oil and gas. It's less expensive. And all the funds knows about, all the banks, the principal banks knows about it. The problem is about what we're going to do with the dependency with this kind of energy. That's the reason, because of energy transition, right? And we are in a very good convergence between the climate emergency, the health, the system health of public health in this moment of coronavirus, and we need a new energy model, economic model from a new, with a new energy, right? So this convergence is a must. No, I always try to make a simple example. For example, at the end of the 19th century, at the beginning of the 20th century, a wind turbine averaged much less than 100 meters and supply maximum 12 kilowatts at the end of the 19th century. By the 19th of the last century, they still measure almost less than 100 meters, but power a little more, a half of a megawatt. So it increased the capacity. For the 2000, we had two mega turbines with a little more than 100 meters. In 2010, we have 7 megawatts with turbines of 200 meters. And now, by 2025, the data says that we're going to have turbines of 15 megas and 300 meters. So that's very clear. The advance has been very, very fast. And there is no time and there is no options to come back.
Yeah. Okay. To conclude, what is your future perspective linking these natural resources with the management of energy?
Well,
you laugh? Why?
It's a difficult question.
A total and absolute interdependence and integration. That is total and integration and interdependence between digital future. Remember that?
Yeah.
Needs lithium or rare earth, and because the oil and gas and coal are going to die as a possible economy. It is, the question is not if it is going to be possible. The question is when it's going to stop. That's the decisions in this. So it is like a sick. The problem with the energy, like as a person who is sick with breathing artificial, right? And we know that is not going to survive the activity of oil and gas. But we need to maintain alive to this thing. That's the problem. So for me, two final tips for maybe this is that Europe must diversify and decentralize various rare earth processing facilities in different countries. So it is an opportunity for Europe not only to develop factories. Factories is easy. You can invest the factory, you can put money, and you can. There is enough money to develop factories. You need to start to research more about the opportunities of this kind of rare earth and lithium here in Europe, in different. In Spain, you have, as I told you, you have one. And another tactic movement in Europe is investigate the recovery of rare earth from electronic waste. That's another opportunity. There is a lot of electronic waste that you have a lot of rare earth and lithium inside of this mobile that we have, or these batteries that we use in different tools that we have.
This is really interesting, and I didn't think of this. Like, I think you both focus a lot on leaving no one behind, which is one of the pillars of Sustainable Development Goals and the 2030 agenda, and on the future challenges and the present challenges of this industry. Do you want to say anything else? We can wait for
Osa, what do you think?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's an interesting future ahead of us, in many ways, in many ways, and it will be interesting to see what long-term consequences COVID will have. I think in some ways we were thinking that this is a reset. This is, and I think WEF has that slogan now, the Great Reset, and where we thought that it would open up for new developments, a new way of thinking, and we would be more careful about nature, we would be more careful about each other. I'm not so sure anymore. I feel like maybe this will be maybe not a really good trend. I see that a lot of countries are will have a harder time letting go of their fossil fuel industry because they need that economic fuel right now. They need it to replenish their funds, the government revenues. So maybe we will actually see a slowdown in the transition, in the energy transition. But that remains to be seen and to be discussed for many years moving on. But I think what is going to happen is that in the longer term is that a lot of the old structures are going to break down and we are going to create something new. I think, for example, with the energy, we're going to see a lot of different energy sources coming together. It's going to be not one source like we've had only oil, for example. It's going to be wind here, it's going to be solar there, it's going to be a much smaller markets and much more peer-to-peer trade, for example. I also think we're going to see a breakdown when it comes to the industry itself. I think ownership structures are going to change. I think that these industries that we've talked a lot about, the industries that need the supply of cobalt and lithium, I think they are going to move into the sector and start owning mines, for example. So that I think is already sort of happening with the Apple has now a deal with a mining company called Glencore to buy directly from them and the cobalt that they source. So I think eventually we're going to see a shift in who owns these mines. If that is going to come with more social responsibility, a feeling that we need to do better in terms of environment, not so sure.
No.
But we have to. I don't think we have a choice, really. We have to think of it differently. We have to look at ourselves as part of this ecosystem and making sure that this wealth that we have in terms of, well, in everything, in terms of clean air, in terms of biodiversity, that we do preserve it for future generations, as they said in the Brundtland report. So what was that, in the 1990s? So the future generations, it has to be our focus. It has to. We don't have that.
That's a key. We don't have any option. We have to do it. What do you think, Miguel? Do you wanna?
I have the idea that we need two groups of institutions that work together. It means the governments for example, in Europe. You know, in Europe, we have the Green Deal working. In September or August, I think is going to be implemented a new budget for the next 7 years. So one of the conditions of the commission is that 25% of the investment must be agreed to the Green Deal. So all the governments, all the nations, the government must follow this recommendation. Of course, we know it's not a link, it's not an obligation, but it's almost an obligation. It's a recommendation because the budget are going to have these conditions. So one side is this from the governments with these kinds of organization like the European Commission, right? Below this, the nations, the different nations. In Spain, for example, 2 or 3 weeks ago, the government has introduced the climate law. They are changing the rules, and they are going to start to discuss in this moment. And of course, it's going to change all the model of these companies are going to manage. For example, Repsol is very interesting. Repsol is investing in this moment in big solar fields here in Spain. Very big, huge. Iberdrola, the same as. So Cepsa, the same. Because all of them know that is necessary. If there is no opportunity to come back, and it's a business too. As I always say, follow the money. They are following the money because they need to maintain as business. So this is one side of the moon, if you want to say something and expression. The other is the corporations, the big corporation. The big corporation with the big funds, the World Bank, for example, the International Development Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, the European Bank, the financial groups, with the big companies, with the big corporations, corporate social responsibility. I have investigated, I have made a research about it. For if you want to make very good social responsibility strategies and activities, we need that these kind of activities must be inside, must be linked with the evaluation of the management, the evaluation of the board. It means, okay, you invest in social responsibility, but we need to know the ROI, the return on investment of this, that impact in something real, in something that is going to change around the activities they are doing. So at the end of the year, the companies should evaluate, and if this kind of activities were made good, no greenwash, were made a real impact on everything, anything that they decide, environmental, social, I don't know. So they are going to get the bonus that they get every year. If they don't get accomplished, they don't get the bonus. That's very simple. If you make this little change, you are going to push to this kind of managers to be aware and to make better projects in corporate social responsibility that are not for greenwashing, are to get a real impact in the society. No? And of course, another thing that the companies should, that's very difficult, but I'm going to tell you, but they're difficult to implement. They put in their politics, in a sustainability politics, but very details, what kind of activities, how they are going to measure, what they are going to do if it don't happen, how many years they are going to do it, why you do it there, right? So if they put in their politics, it is going to be a compliance. So all of the society are going to be overdid watching it and recommending the implementation. And it is business. It is business because most of the money, I have seen a lot of errors, most of the money that is directed to greenwashing are making in any kind of project that are not sustainable. Projects that only is for publicity, for marketing, and that is not sustainable. So that's the reason, because in my country, that's the reason because most of the mining companies don't have legitimized, don't have a good reputation around the communities, because of the strategies of corporate social responsibility are not linked to the sustainable development of the communities around the operations. Are linked only for publicity, for image, and that is not a good business. So these two kind of changes are important to do. From in institutions, from the politics institutions, the law. Remember, the law must, the nations should follow in this case the Green Deal, and the organizations need to rethink, to change the chip about the strategies of corporate social responsibility. And this, of course, in the big picture of the ODS, Objective of Sustainable Development.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, you two, for this so interesting speech and talk, informal talk we've done. I think we have to address these issues more in depth and more frequently, and we will definitely listen to your podcast, all high grade media. And yeah. Well, I don't think we have any. Oh, well, we have a question here. Do you guys think we have time to make the transition?
Time to make the transition. That's that we were talking about. If everybody knows, the regulators knows, the European authorities knows that if we start the transition to accelerate the transition, we are very difficult to arrive to 25, right? To 2050, sorry, right? So we need to accelerate. Yes, we need to accelerate the transition. Everybody knows how to do it. That's the problem. How, for example, imagine 80% of the economy, I think 80% of the economy depends in Poland, depend of coal. What is going to happen if you close this kind of mines in Poland? I agree that we need to close this tomorrow. I think that anybody can tell the opposite. Tomorrow we need to close everything. Tomorrow we need to close all the oil camps or all the oil fields for me. But it's not going to be possible in this moment. How we can advance with this? Of course, the companies must invest more in research and how develop faster the transitions. And of course, the governments should support more in this kind of transition. This law is going to help a lot in Spain. This new law that has introduced the government to the parliament is going to help, and we hope all the countries in Europe. But the problems are the other countries, of course. China. How do you rule China? How do you Australia? Australia is very. I'm very worried about that because Australia, of course, needs right now to a lot of the infrastructure of coal and oil, fundamental coal supports their economy. No, tomorrow they close the coal. What they are going to do? All of these families. So of course, for me, yes, we can accelerate it. It depends of the companies, of course, but of course of the support of the different authorities of the different governments to accelerate this transition.
What do you think of that? Yeah.
I think that most climate scientists would say that we're not moving fast and far enough. We're moving in the right direction, that's for sure. I mean, I think now that it's cheaper to launch new renewable projects than fossil fuel projects. So we're definitely moving in the right direction, but there's so many forces working in a different direction. And we've created an enormous dependency on fossil fuels. And I'm not just talking about for the car, but for everything everything you see around you. If it's not grown, it's mined. So pretty much everything that we use comes from fossil fuel industry. Well, in the latest podcast that we released, we talked about the face masks for COVID. Of course, It comes from the fossil fuel industry. So we've created an enormous dependency on this. So Miguel, you said follow the money. And I mean, the money is really in the industry still. And there are so many countries, you mentioned it already, that are completely dependent on this. And for them to diversify, I remember asking Professor Paul Stevens in one of the interviews, and I said, so how are they doing, for example, the Middle Eastern countries? And he said they should have started 40 years ago with this diversification because they're completely dependent on it still. And now diversifying is a very tough thing to do. We saw it happening in Asia and in many countries in sort of the tiger economies, but finding new spaces of diversifying into is becoming increasingly difficult for continents like Africa, for example. And you have the developing world that is still very dependent on coal for the development, and it's difficult for sort of the northern hemisphere to say, well, yeah, we developed on the back of burning coal, but you can't. So you will have to hold off with your development while we take care of this climate change issue that we've caused. So there's so many factors to take into account when you look at whether we're going to make it or not.
For example, another very quickly, in Peru, 45 or almost 50% of the energy comes from gas. Camisea from gas. You close Camisea field, and the half of the country don't have electric lights, right? But that's a big problem. In this moment, and the parliament is discussing, we need to close this, but we don't have the infrastructure of the renewable energy developed. We need to accelerate this kind of development. That's the reason, because the government must give subventions, support to invest in this kind of infrastructure, no? Right? But that's I know that a lot of countries have similar problems with the dependence to this kind of energy. So we need to go fast as we can. Yes, of course, but we need to change it with solid arguments and without affecting a lot of families that are inside of this kind of industries, of course.
And who actually haven't done the damage, like they've been ordered to do so, and because they had to. So, well, we could be hours talking about this, I think, and we can like in a future conversation, because this is a series. And
we have one here. Yeah. Hola, Jesus. We have a question here regarding communication.
And the question?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's making the question.
Okay.
I guess so.
Ooh.
So
how do we put communication? From whom? From the...
No, I guess this issue on the...
Okay. Yeah. Ooh. Yeah. Well, we tried, we're trying to contribute with that, because I think not only do we need to have a discussion, but we have to have a reasonable and rational discussion, and really trying to come up with solution. It's easy to point fingers and say, it's your fault, you should do this, you should do that, but we need to have really constructive discussions around this. But it's difficult, I think. Well, being Swedish, I think Greta Thunberg, who I'm sure you all know who she is. I mean, she was a master communicator in her way. We all can contribute in some way, and she just by sitting there saying the things she said and protesting, she created this global movement. Do you remember the Fridays for Future, where millions of people took to the street to protest against climate change, I guess it would be. So there are of course initiatives, but these are difficult issues to discuss. I don't know if I have anything more concrete to offer to your question.
Do you want to say anything, Miguel?
Okay, I think we need to continue make a lot of events like this, to write everything in every place, in all of the newspapers about this. And of course, we need to research more about and publish more about this. For example, the high grade is a very important space where you made also a very important program about equality, gender, for the gender. Wow, you put emphasis in something that is a taboo in the mining sector. It's a taboo. You know something, maybe most of you don't know, in 40 or 50, less, 30 years ago, a woman could not enter into the mine because it was a bad luck, right? And it was assumed something formal. No, woman can be in the mines because you are going to have a bad project, right? And that's a concept, of course, that doesn't have scientific, you cannot prove that, but in this moment, I don't know the percentage, but the same as in different activities, women don't have important positions except in Anglo-American. Cynthia Carroll was one of the exceptions 4 or 5 years ago. But yes, there are a lot of opportunities to develop different kind of programs write a lot about it, research more, and of course, try to make, in the universities, try to make more participation. Most of the students at university don't know a lot about these issues, don't know about it. So it's important for this opportunity.
Yeah. I hope it's changing. I think it's changing a bit with the new generation. They are talking more about it in school, and it kind of comes more natural for them. But I see Jesus, you made a point here that talking about it beyond individual action and lifestyle, because big moves are needed, and sometimes there is a lot of attention on lifestyle. And I agree. I completely agree. I mean, I'm one of those people. I'm vegan, I try to live, I buy secondhand and all of that. But even if everyone went vegan, it wouldn't be enough, it would be far from enough. So I agree with that point, and I think it's a very important one, that it's systematic changes that need to happen. And this means that governments need to be a leader in it. Because without them, we can't really change the bigger systems. We need big organizations like the EU to be part of the systematic changes as well. And I agree. I mean, we try to lift it to that with High Grade and what we do. We've had a number of talks on the future of energy, climate change, minerals for the future. So we try to sort of lift it to that level, that systematic level, and see what can be done. But I agree. I think it's an issue. I think it might be more abstract for people than just saying you should not fly as much. That's quite concrete for people, but saying that we need systematic changes, that's a little bit more difficult to communicate. But I completely agree that that's a discussion and a communication that we need to focus on more.
Yeah. Okay. So we don't have any further questions, I think. Well, we can put an end to this conversation and let it flow to the next one. Thank you so much to both of you, Miguel and Nasa. It's been a really we have learned a lot in this really enriching conversation, and we hope you had enjoyed it. I hope you, both the public, have enjoyed it as well. We wanted to do a survey if you have liked it, but I don't know. Yeah. Let's see. Can you see it?
Okay. Okay. Pretty good.
This is a try.
Can I submit too?
Very good.
Okay. This is so nice.
Very good. Good research after the proposal.
Yeah. We can put an end here then. Thank you so much.
Okay, Lola.
You too, and see you in the next one.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for listening, and highgrade.media.
Thanks to everybody. Thanks, Sasha. Thanks, Sasha. Okay, very good. Thank you. See you.
So do you want me to stay on?
Yeah, I thought so, but Miguel has left. Miguel. Ay, okay.
Hi, Christina.
Okay, so if Miguel is not here, maybe not. Like I'm gonna ask Miguel. I've loved it. Do you think? I think it's been really smooth. And
yeah, no, it was a conversation.
Yeah,
works really well actually.
Oh,
coming back.
I'm really happy. I was quite nervous, but it worked out perfectly. Let's see. Miguel? Okay.
Hola. Sorry.
Yeah. Shall I send the link of the other meeting?
Yeah. Are all of us, but only, I don't know if maybe in another link or in this one.
No, in the chat I just put the link.
Ooh,
The podcast link.
Yeah, just hold on a second. I'll with you. Here we go.
Podcast.
No, wait.
Well, this sustainably.
Yeah, I can't copy paste the link, but search for the Natural Resources Podcast.
Ya. O sea, tengo que presionar. ¿Cuál es, Lola?
El de Meet. El link de Meet.
¿El de 722?
Sí.
Ahí entro.
Sí. Osa, can you go to the link as well?
Yep.
The one I sent. Meet
Okay.
Google.
Entro ahí. Entro.
Yeah. Sí. So we have to leave here, I think.
Yeah, I'm in the other link now. So I'm leaving this.
Yeah.